Welcome to the podcast, everybody. It's everybody's favorite and our favorite time where we do a co host chat and we just sit around and talk for a little bit. So, welcome to our conversation.
Yeah, we sit around and talk anyways, but we just happen to be recording it now in a we don't usually get any better or worse when we're recording. It's pretty much raw data. Um,
Before we hit the record button, Sister was talking about their adventure in the woods. We just had some young ladies out hiking, camping, and you were talking about this zero gravity chair. Go on.
yeah, so this was what Camino Mo. It was with the Vincentian Marian Youth out in
St. Genevieve. That's right, Missouri.
Perryville. Is it St. Genevieve? It's all these areas around there, I guess, right? Six young women and Sister Sharon Horace, myself, and a friend of mine came to help me. And because we were there to be kind of the Sherpas, we were we were not guiding the troop, but we were carrying the heavy load of making sure the camp was as set up as possible. So while the women were out hiking, my friend Melissa and we took care of trekking all the stuff up to the campsite, which was a bit of a distance out in the woods, but it was nice. And I said a couple of times, I've never been camping before. She was like, "What?" I said, "No, never camped out in my life, actually." And I wasn't out hiking. I said, "I'm getting a little too old for hiking." And, I just have to admit, I am where I am. So I thought, I'm not so sure that I can really sleep in a sleeping bag on the ground or even on one of the platforms. If you've gone hiking now, they have these wooden platforms that you can pitch your tent on. And, it's really pretty good. So I said, well, I'll just sleep in. First, I was going to sleep in the van, but it's like a quarter mile maybe to the parking lot, which tells you about how far we lugged 10 people's camping gear, which was great. I mean, it was perfect to do it because we had the time. They could enjoy their hike. When they got done and came back, they really just had to set up their tents. So it was really, I mean, I was glad to be able to do it and to be of help to Sister Sharon in the group. um, but as I said, I've never hiked in this fashion before and never actually set up a campsite. I've never done that before. So I wasn't really sure. But, anyways, since I wasn't going to sleep in a tent, in a sleeping bag, for different reasons, it was more comfortable to sleep like in a chair. I found this, it's called a zero gravity reclining chair, and they're not very expensive. And they're like a souped up Uber um, lounge chair, where you can put your feet up and that kind of thing. And you just sit back in it, and it's the most comfortable thing I've ever been in my life. And I ended up sleeping outside, staring at the stars. It was fabulous. It was so wonderful. And everyone else was in their tents. And I was like, I've never camped out before. Should I be in a tent? Well, I sprayed, with a little, bug spray so that the bugs wouldn't get. Thank God it was a beautiful night. It wasn't wet. So it was cool enough that the bugs were, happily sleeping, doing whatever. But, there was one point in like probably midnight, I heard this kind of scratching. And again, we're on this kind of platform, so, but I hear this furring and I'm like, all right, you squirrels, find your little hidey hole and go to bed. All God's creatures are going to bed right now. And then, there were kind of people walking up and down the trail, so you'd hear different things through the night. But for real, it was the most beautiful experience. The night sky was so clear, incredibly clear. And I thought, if I do this again, I don't think I'm doing a tent. I kind of liked it out here in the rough. Um, and the chair I was not in the rough. I was in this wonderfully comfortable chair with a sleeping bag. We put a chair in front of my chair and thought, well, if anyone wants to get in here, they're going to have to work their way through some bells and whistles to get to me. At one point, I did hear two coyotes howling at each other. and but they were far enough in the distance that I was not afraid. So yeah, it was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. The experience was good. Um, Sister Sharon had some beautiful prayers just about really relying on God and using the time and the space of nature to let God speak, when oftentimes God is drowned out by the noise of life, the things that we keep ourselves busy with. We had zero, like zero cell phone, except a couple of people who had cricket, I think, or something, had like 2 bars, but everyone else was really we had nothing. So we couldn't call each other. There was a satellite, so on my phone, it was like, "You may not be able to text with this, but if you use the satellite." I'm like, "The satellite?" So you hold your phone up to the sky and it, like, says, "Move left," and point to a clear sky and move left, and then all of a sudden, a little green button comes on, and you're hooked to a satellite in the sky. Like, who knew?
Listen, this is like a segue into the heavens, talking about Artemis 3 and these beautiful 4 beautiful humans who just talk about working together, talk about being a crew with a mission, and the dark side of the moon was not dark. Can we just have a whole meditation about how we imagined that this dark side of the moon had nothing, no way of knowing? They had all these special cameras to be able to, quote unquote, deal with the dark. And it wasn't dark.
Yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful segue. In fact, we came home and literally landed in our local community room like a minute before they landed, right, in the ocean. So it was this beautiful, like, we've all been out in this adventure, and here we are showing up, and we spent the rest of the night watching this amazing landing in the ocean and the extracting of them from the capsule. I mean, the stuff was just amazing. And they would show some of the pictures of what they took. I thought, we just don't live in the same world anymore. Like, this is happening at the same time war is raging around the world. You're thinking, how do we shift our conversation to this idea of the incredible, vast, amazing, wonderful world that the Lord has created? And I just felt so privileged to say that, that night I slept on a platform in the middle of, Johnson's shut in Missouri, looking up at the same stars that they had just flown near. It was amazing.
I love it. I love it. I kept texting my friend Jackie, shout out to Jackie Perry, who works for like Johns Hopkins slash NASA. And it's really something. Like, I'm like, look at this video. And she's sending me videos about like all the crew and everything. And oh, what a gift to just we needed that grace, that bright moment of universal oneness as humanity in these dark times. We have needed this example of teamwork, the example of different people coming together for a common mission, um, just to bring some light in the darkness. And I think that it's a little bit of Easter, isn't it? A little resurrection of sorts to hear from these folks, both from space and then after they landed. So go check it out, guys. Go check out some of the talks by the crew.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And to just listen to them too and realize that as they're speaking, which I think is another, how do we define ourselves? How do we partisan ourselves sometimes, one side or the other? And they astronauts speak about themselves as human beings doing things for humanity, that they've returned to planet Earth, they've returned to their home, the Earth. They don't talk about, I flew into San Diego, you know what I mean? If they really have this kind of very, not just global, but this universal image of us and Earth being part of a even bigger picture, the universe of of our imagination. Like, they saw things that we didn't know were there, and there's so much more that we can see and do. So yeah, it's really amazing. It's amazing. And there we were hiking out around in the midst of it.
Camino Mo. What a genius. I mean, for anyone who's done the Camino, it's a journey of transformation. And so to have that happen on a tiny, tiny scale in Missouri, and yeah, we've done this. This is our second foray into hiking, camping, retreat with young ladies as a way to connect with God and to understand your own journey, not just of discernment as such, like okay, discerning religious life, but just as a model for thinking about life in general, and how do I notice the presence of God in this journey, in the smallest of things, even when I'm tired and grumpy or groggy from a bad night's sleep. God is walking with us and saying like, hey, look up, you know.
We'll have to get Sister Sharon on to talk about it, about just her own planning of it too. I mean, I think that she just did such a great job in mapping out. We did some reconnaissance before, so she could hike the trail, and so she would know what not just like what the trail would be like, but what are the wonders on the trail that they don't want to miss, and how to help people navigate maybe a part of nature that they're not used to being a part of, but to begin to see what we might miss because we're so determined to get through the path that we forget to look on the sides to see, what's there, how God is calling us to really pay attention. So I think she really helped them to do that.
Well, we kind of skipped ahead past Easter, but let's any experiences you want to share about the Easter Vigil, of the Paschal mystery of going through Holy Week. What a gift to be able to welcome new people into the church in record numbers. By the way, in the United States, huge numbers coming in. So what a opportunity for gratitude.
Yeah, and don't we hope that that's a sign really that people are turning to God, turning to their faith, re-examining their faith, maybe coming home to the faith, whatever you want to say, because we are so in need. We are so in need of God and the redemption, the love, the caring of Jesus Christ. I mean, it's such an important move, and really important to see that idea that there are record numbers. I'm sure they're record in whatever time span we put together, but it is the ebb and flow of life, right? And we are in a time when we just need our faith to be not just something I walk around with, but something that I concretely engage in, participating in my own faith journey, and so in the journey of others. We ended up for Easter going to a sunrise service at St. Ambrose Parish in here in St. Louis, and it was in the piazza. St. Ambrose is the kind of ethnically Italian parish in the area that we live. We live in the Irish area, so back in the days when things were still very, very segregated, the early Europeans arriving. And so St. Ambrose has been traditionally, they even have a statue of two Italian immigrants right in the front part of the church. But they've built a piazza. It's like an Italian piazza. It's got a big fountain in the middle, and it's just beautiful. And so they had mass there, and you can see between the church building and another building, you can see the sunrise. It's perfectly aligned for this time of year. So 6 o'clock in the morning, it was cold, and there had to have been at least 200 people there. And of course, you knew the people who had been there before because they all brought chairs. The rest of us was sitting on like cold marble benches that are out there. Oh Lord, we'll know the next time. But it was really beautiful. It was a wonderful, simple celebration. And rising that early in the morning to go and meet the Lord at His own rising was really quite beautiful.
At the parish we were at during the Alleluia, there were all of a sudden people carrying big things of balloons, handfuls of helium balloons, and all the children, this is crazy, all of the children had little flowers. And so they did this procession with balloons. It looked like the movie Up in one sense, like procession of children with flowers and these balloons. And they ended at the cross that they had there, and they put the flowers that the children had brought onto the cross and attached these balloons. And it was just, it was so precious. And I mean, I had never been to the Easter Sunday at this particular church, the monastery here in Baltimore, and so it was just like a shock, and then I really like a little tear coming down, like, and the children will lead them, and let the little children lead them. It was so precious, and it just reminded me of Easter joy. And I don't know if people do word of the year, but my words of the year this year are surprise and delight. That God wants to surprise and delight us. And so just it has consistently come back again and again of these little moments of grace, surprising moments where God just comes in sideways and you're like, oh, blown away. And it just gave me so much hope and peace. And I love seeing little kids at church and all of their cute little dresses. And I mean, for Easter, people are still, they're still getting dressed up, and they're still celebrating in these precious ways. So it was really beautiful to see everybody. And then of course at the Easter vigil, to have a couple of people baptized, and coming into the church, getting their confirmation and all of that. It never fails to inspire and spur my heart on to give my heart and life to Jesus once again. I mean, it's not a one-time thing. It's an every single day, sometimes every hour of saying, like, Lord, I am here, and I'm in it with you. And Lent was Lenti this year, and so it's time to welcome the Easter joy. Even in the midst of difficulties and challenge, we can still have hope, because he came out of the grave. He came up, he rose, and he's on the throne, and he is God, and he's in control, and we are not. So we just need to claim that truth.
Yeah. One of the things we did, it just brings us back when you were saying about Lent, some of the women in the Ladies Sodality group, who are also in a women's um, scripture study, Bible study, church study group that I have at our house on Wednesday, one Wednesday a month. Anyways, they wanted to do something on the Stations of the Cross. Our particular parish is two different parishes together, and two separate parishes that kind of share a pastor and all that. So we didn't have stations every Friday, but they really wanted to do something. So we had stations. And one of the things we did was, it was something I had seen done with kids, because you can learn from kids, of course, in school. I was not an elementary school teacher. I was a high school teacher, but we did have an elementary school. And one of the things was they created these small cards, and on the card was the station itself, Jesus, falls for the first time. And on the card was like a little Band-Aid, right? And just the question, whose wounds have you taken care of today, or what wounds do you need Jesus to heal in you? And so it was really precious. They just did a basic Stations of the Cross, but we had all made these. I worked with them, and we made these cards. And so it was like the very first station, Jesus is condemned. There was a piece of rope on it, to show him being bound. And so, who in your life is bound to sin, or who in your life is bound to something that's really holding them, or maybe something someone's been accused of, that's keeping them bound. That's not really true, and it's a struggle for them. So it really helped create a more tactile and interactive experience. And it was so simple, but it was really beautiful. So I would recommend that to anyone, especially if you work with kids. It's a real experience to watch kids try to define what symbol you would put for this station. For the women weeping, they put a tissue. That was precious. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's so perfect, So it was good. It was really good. So I just share that sometime, stations can be done anytime. They don't have to just wait till Lent. But certainly if there's something that we're struggling with and we need to recognize that we're on this journey. It's my grandma's thing. Like everybody's walking the stations every day. And Jesus is there to help us lift the cross that we're carrying, and to be like Veronica, reaching out and trying to comfort us. So, yeah, so try that out sometime.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to make our faith very practical, tactile, and real. And thankfully, in parish life and in community, we have people like that who are more creative, who have those ways to really help us internalize those truths, because it not everybody has that gift, and thank God we're able to share that with each other. Oh gosh, this is the travel month, sister. Watch out. I have so much swag for you. Stick- Yeah. I went out to Benedictine College, which was the first time I'd ever been out to Atchison, Kansas, which, by the way, is not far from Leavenworth, where we have the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth have their place over there in Kansas. And what a delightful and unexpected experience. It was very nice. It reminded me a lot of Mount St. Mary's, smaller Catholic school, full of young people, full of faith. Um, I was there for 3 days, and every single meal I was eating with different groups of students. And then they had this whole Google Sheets list of slots where I could meet with people individually. And in those, like, whatever, 72 hours, I guess I was there, I met with, I think it was like 12 or 13 young ladies, students. So, and it could have been more, or it could have been like I could have met for longer. They gave me 30-minute time slots, and I'm like, okay, well, like we gotta dive in real quick if we want to have a meaningful conversation. But just and not all of the young ladies were discerning religious life necessarily. Some were, but just thinking about their major, thinking about God's call, thinking about relationships, and what should I be doing? How do I pray? These are some core, yeah, I would say, themes that have come up again and again throughout meeting with these young people, and it was so delightful. I mean, it's awkward when you don't know a place and you've never been there and you don't know what you're getting yourself into, but every single one of them was like, "Oh my gosh, what's your name and what community are you from?" And it makes it so much easier when you meet fresh faces who are happy to know you and interested in what you got going on. But once again, examples of young people really seeking God in their life, and wanting to hear his voice, and tell me, okay, but how do I know if it's my voice, or how do I know if it's God, or what do I do if I there was one young lady who was like, when I was thinking about religious life and getting excited, it was like God and I were fireworks. Like I was felt like I was hearing him and all this stuff, and now it just feels like crickets. And so just helping people walk through that, the experience of the ups and downs of the spiritual life is really something special, and good on them for being willing to sit and talk with a random stranger nun coming to their campus, like, hey, I'm here. And yeah, just it's a leap of faith, and And there's something about talking to somebody who's completely outside of the situation. And I don't have an agenda. I don't, I you may not see me ever again. Maybe you will, but maybe not. And so I think it makes it little easier. Like, oh, I don't have to see her next week. I could tell her whatever I want to tell her.
That is great. That is real. Yeah, it is a freedom. I imagine it is a freedom. Even like when we were at Seek, I felt the same. Like people were coming up and like, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And I thought, "Okay, but what are we going to talk about? There's like 16,000 people here." But you just realize you just take one step. It's like, you just enter into a private zone that's still surrounded by 16,000 other people, and yet you can really get focused and talk about some pretty deep issues, you know, because the time is right and the freedom is there. Sometimes people just need a voice that's not going to be there later. They can say what they need, and it's like confession, but not. You know, like I just need to say this to someone. Like this is what I'm thinking about. I just need to say it, and this is a safe place because I know I'm never going to see you again. You know, but I've said the words.
Saying it out loud, there's something about taking it from the head into like verbalizing what you got going on. And I had the same experience this past weekend. I was with the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, had their spring retreat, and just another example opportunity to hang out with. These are students that I see more often because they're in Baltimore, and so I go and hang out with them. And it's Father Matt, who I knew from Mount St. Mary's, and just such a wonderful priest. And I remember when he was a college student, so I can always hold that over his head, like don't get too big for your britches, sir, because I remember you. But just a charming fellow. And yeah, these students also are incredibly diverse and just constantly seeking God in their challenges, in their brokenness, in their weaknesses and failings, but also their gifts and talents. And this weekend's theme was that of trust. And we talked about the gift of mercy and St. Faustina because it's the Divine Mercy Sunday, and also St. Therese and her little way. And I wish I could. Those who are listening wouldn't necessarily see this, but there's a little picture um, by a lady online. Her name is Patty.te. She's an artist out of Spain, and she created the most beautiful stuff on the Divine Mercy. I'll show it to you, sister. You can see this little kiddo, and she's got the red and blue. She's in an ocean of mercy. Can you see that? Isn't that the most delightful thing? And yes. And St. Faustina talks about this ocean of grace and mercy that God wants for us. And it's not to the great and to the powerful, but rather to the little ones who ask for his mercy. And so that's something that I think sometimes those who are on the spiritual path think that they have to be a great saint, and it feels very overwhelming and it feels unattainable, and just like I can't do that. I'm not St. Paul, I'm not St. Faustina, I'm not one of these giants, these spiritual giants. But it's Saint Therese who talks about, no, I actually need to be littler, like in my littleness. I can't climb she called it the stairway of perfection. She was like, I got to use the elevator. I got to be little, like a little child in the arms of Jesus, going up the elevator of perfection, because I can't be a great saint with all that power and strength, because I just don't have it. And um, it's hard sometimes to switch your mindset of success and achievement and effort, all of which, not that we don't put in effort, but like the power and strength doesn't come from us. So we have to trust more. We have to give more and become littler so that the power of God can be manifested through us. And so Saint Therese, teach us something.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, they didn't know who they were. I mean, they didn't know that someday we would be having this conversation about them. You know that really saintliness is this desire to continue to be as faithful to who God's calling us to be, and to be that as authentically as we can be. You know, to just continue to keep searching. And isn't that what we've been talking about? You know, the young people, and they're not always young. I mean, there's others. I've been working with two groups, some sisters and another group talking about social justice issues, right? And we can think, well, that's kind of the militant out there doing these conversations of hard topics, you know. But you realize that when we engage in any conversation that calls for the justice of God and the mercy of God and the and we believe, we really truly believe that when we engage with another, that we are engaging in a divine conversation. You know that the Lord is there to join us in that conversation and help lead us on to, um, to the truth that He desires for us. And so I've been working with two groups. One is on using the Just Faith programs. If you haven't used them and you're looking for something that's really attainable, it's easy to use. They do have a cost to them. It's not extraordinary, and but they're just 8 sessions. You can do them in 8 days, or you can 8 weeks, or every other week. So the one I've been doing is on immigration, which is a really hot topic, of course, right now. It's very difficult to have these conversations, but when you put it in the context of how does the Lord ask us to welcome, love, respect, journey with the stranger, and who is the stranger? What does that even mean? Is anyone really a stranger? We're all human beings. We all have desires and wants, families, um, and so, what is it that's strange? And even to have that conversation, the language that we use, and how it can separate us from people, but in the same time, saying if Jesus calls on us to walk with a stranger, to visit those who are in prison, to do the work that he did to be available to people, then we need to step up and do that. So we have one group that we're talking about the issues of immigration today, and what does the church really call us to, and the other is a really interesting program that also Just Faith does, is called "This Land Is Not Our Own," and it's about creating right relationship with indigenous communities. So you can see those are pretty big topics. They're and yet we can be overwhelmed by them when we try to deal with them ourselves. But when we're willing to have really open and honest conversations about what we see happening in the world, what are the injustices that we see, how do we begin to right our own relationship with those we saw as other, and now realize that they are sister and brother to me. And how do I do that in a way that's authentic, that doesn't cause more harm? you know um, it becomes a real challenge, but it's that kind of conversation, I think, that also brings us into the conversation of Jesus rising from the pain and suffering of his crucifixion, to saying, I've risen out of that. We can all rise out of our own fears, rise out of our own struggle, rise out of the persecution we see around us, um, knowing we'll rise with the same wounds, right? We hear about Thomas saying, "I won't believe it." I don't believe that we can fix these things. I don't believe that Jesus can rise. I don't believe that the tomb is empty. I don't believe that we can fix the struggles and the social injustices of the world. And yet, Jesus says, "Here I am. I'm still wounded, but I'm here." I still see the wounds are still, you're not going to take away that sign of the oppression, but you can comfort and be knowledgeable and acknowledge, that we can rise out of the darkness. So that's the stuff I've been in. But it's the same. We're always constantly trying to call ourselves and call those we encounter to that deeper sense of God's mercy and grace, and His call for us to be the best we can be, the best possible selves that He's given us. And isn't that really what Easter should be about?
And we'll be living it for another how many days? There are 50 days of Easter, friends. So we got a lot of the Easter season yet to go, and we're just excited to live into that.
And I just love the Catholic tradition of this 8-day celebration. I mean, some people get annoyed by it, like, because of course, if you pray the Liturgy of the Hours, you know that Easter Sunday for 8 days is the same prayer. You're praying exactly the same thing because the day is continuing. But that sense of the 8 days of Hanukkah, that 8 days of light come to us at Christmas. So when everyone else is putting away their tree and their decorations, Catholics are just starting to wish everyone Merry Christmas. We got 8 more days of this. We got the octave of Christmas, and the octave of Easter. Easter week. The celebration of the feast begins on the feast, right? And beyond that, we're enjoying the readings of Jesus showing up in everybody's life, shocking the heck out of them, and, yeah, and saying, well, when is Jesus going to invite me to the beach for breakfast? It can happen. It can happen. So yeah, that joy, that sense that both the light of Christmas and the light of Easter are days that we don't want to just spend that moment and say, okay, he rose, we're done. No, 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 we've got to let this linger. We want to sit in the joy of this for a while. And so that's a really important part of it, a part of any, um, I think, spiritual experience. When you feel like you've come to the place that you've asked the Lord for something and you feel like you've gotten it, and you're like, okay, thanks, bye. No, 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 no. No, it's thank you and thank you and thank you and thank you, to really take time to bask in the fact that you've been blessed so by the Lord. I mean, that to me is the Easter message. That's why it takes 50 days for us to get out of it.
Yes. Well, we invite each and every one of you who are listening to fully embrace this season of Easter that has so much grace for you in store. Just to the extent that we're open and available to it, God will move in our hearts and lives in very, very powerful ways. So the graces of Easter will continue. And we just claim that, and we pray for you guys, and I just thank you for sticking with us. We have some cool episodes coming up, and if you haven't listened to the episodes about peace, and being peacemakers, please do so, because they're super powerful and challenging and much needed during this time especially. So God bless you.
God bless.